Hey everybody, this is Kelly and welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Today I want to talk to you about anxiety and anxiety disorders. I want to talk to you about myths about anxiety and what we can do to debunk some of them and how we can get you the help that you need. I have a former video that I will link in the description and also at the end of this video with specific methods on how to handle anxiety as it comes up. So if you have an emergent anxiety situation, you can check that out. There's a couple of different options on how to do that. The more crazy our world seems to be, the more I hear people explain away their issues with stress or with anxiety or with worry. And I hate that because anxiety is a real thing and we all feel anxiety. We all feel anxious sometimes. There is a difference between anxiety and an anxiety disorder, but neither are great. Neither are super, super helpful and neither are comfortable. The difference specifically between anxiety and an anxiety disorder are, number one, stressors. For anxiety in general, anxiety is brought on by a stressor, a test, a situation at work that you're worried about, a circumstance in your life, a circumstance in a family member's life that you're concerned about. Those are stressors that bring on anxiety and worry. An anxiety disorder is the whole of life that is the anxiety and the stressors. For someone with an anxiety disorder, certain stressors might make it worse, but it's not the stressor that starts the issue. Some of the key differences between anxiety and an anxiety disorder are, first of all, stressors. The stressor is what prompts the anxiety. So if you have a test or if you have a big project at work or a situation with a family member or a friend that causes a large amount of worry, a large amount of stress, and a large amount of just anxious feelings, those are stressors. And typically with anxiety itself, you are dealing with stressors and those stressors then go away. For people with anxiety disorders, the anxious feelings that they have throughout the day aren't always linked to one specific thing. It becomes larger and it becomes more intrusive into their lives and into their processing of day-to-day things. Another one is intensity and length. The intensity of the reaction to the stressor depends on the seriousness of the stressor. You are going to have more anxiety about certain things than you are about other things. And so the intensity of it really needs to match the thing that brings it on or the thing that it's most attributed to. Now, it is true that a lot of people with anxiety disorders don't realize it until they recognize the disproportionate nature of the anxiety versus the stressor. And so that goes back to the first one being that there is usually a stressor for anxiety. The caveat being that the stressor could also be what helps you realize you have an anxiety disorder. So that then goes to length. The length of the reaction to the stressor or to the anxious situation needs to be proportionate also to the actual situation. So for instance, if you are anxious about an exam and you take the exam and then you're anxious about your results and then you're anxious about what the results mean, that is a lengthier thing still from that same point of the exam. So at that point, your anxiety is not about the exam anymore. Your anxiety is about a couple other things. The length of an anxiety circumstance in the life of somebody who does not have an anxiety disorder is proportionate to the length of the issue. For someone who has a disorder, their responses to it, their somatic responses, their emotional responses can go on for weeks or months. In the DSM-5, which is what therapists and other professionals use to diagnose specific disorders, I don't go into the DSM-5 a whole lot in my videos because I don't want y'all running around with that information and diagnosing yourself and others. That's not really helpful. But in the DSM-5, there's 5 or 6 different anxiety disorders that people can fall into category-wise, and then there's specific parts of those categories they can also fall into. So there's a lot of different ways somebody can be described and diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, but by and large, most of them, they are looking at the actual impact being 6 months or more and affecting the majority of their processing time in those 6 months. And that's a large part of the difference between the two is how long has it affected your everyday processing in life? And what is it that dealing with this is taking from you? And is it interfering with your day-to-day processes of life and of relationships and of being a productive person in your life? Now, what that looks like is different from person to person because it has to be what their functioning was prior to the anxiety onset and then after the anxiety onset. So it's really not a one size fits all. Like if you've been dealing with this for 6 months, clearly you have an anxiety disorder. It still doesn't work that way either. We have a phrase we use mental health wise, and it is clinically significant distress. Is this issue causing you clinically significant distress? Is it interrupting your processing in your everyday life, in your relationships, in your ability to carry out your responsibilities, in your ability to sleep, to eat, to do the things that your body needs to live? If it is interfering, then that's causing clinically significant distress. If it's not, you might have really good coping mechanisms for your anxiety because you've been dealing with it for so long, or it may be something that, while very uncomfortable and very much in need of attention, does not need to have a long-term diagnosis. Also, other symptoms. An anxiety event is something that doesn't typically have a lot of other symptoms to it. You don't typically get things like panic attacks and stuff from an anxiety event. You can, but typically the other things, like with the anxious thoughts, with the brain swirling, you also get things like nausea, dizziness, high blood pressure. There's a lot of other things that happen sustainably across time during these events that makes it more than just a solitary event. Now we're going to deal with myths about anxiety. The first one is the one that I hear all of the time, and it baffles me that people feel this way. And so we're just going to throw it out there. Ready? The myth is anxiety isn't real. I don't know what to do with that one because it's such crap. Anxiety is real. It should be that easy. It should be that easy. But the problem is that this I hear either from people who have loved ones with severe anxiety disorders, or I hear it from people who have anxiety disorder and they do not want to admit it. And so they're like, no, I'm just stressed out. No, I can handle my stuff. I'm just tired right now. Well, everyone's stressed out and other people have bigger issues than mine, so this is not a problem. All of those things are incorrect. Can you be tired and therefore not processing things well? Sure, absolutely. Can you be just extra stressed during a certain period of time in your life? For sure you can. But if you are in a day-to-day situation where you are finding it harder and harder and harder for you to control yourself, if you're having angry outbursts, if you're having episodes of disassociation where you just kind of space out, you don't know what's happening, you don't really remember, kind of time's going past and you don't realize it's happening. If you're doing things out of the ordinary for your character, if people are noticing and you're noticing that you're processing every day and your methods on a regular basis are very different from how they used to be, you might have a problem that needs to be dealt with. It doesn't matter how bad you think your problems are. You cannot compare your anxiety problems with someone else's because your experience is your experience. And just because their experience might seem worse or harder or more stressful to you does not mean that yours is not hard or stressful. Knowing someone with PTSD does not make my anxiety not real. It makes my anxiety different, but that's because our experiences are different. A lot of people try to control anxiety by controlling the things around them, and that's actually myth number 2, that anxiety can be dealt with by controlling your environment. For someone who has anxiety, control is very important. When you feel loss of control, a lot of times it will come up for you that you will become more anxious. Controlling your environment can help sometimes, but excessive control over your environment just makes your anxiety worse when you're in situations you can't control. There's no real way to live your life in a way that you're in control of everything. And so you're setting yourself up for worse anxiety by going down a road where, I can control everything. I can make my life the way I want it to be. And therefore my anxiety will go away. It might feel like it has because it's gone dormant, because there's not as much to be anxious about. But the minute you're not in control again, all of that is back. That's not processing. That's not working through it. That's ignoring the problem. The next 2 myths are really highly related. And so we're going to make them 3 and 4. And that's about medication. So one of the myths, this just baffles me. One of the myths that I hear all the time is the only way to deal with anxiety is medication. And the other myth I hear again, all of the time is, medication is a lifelong thing and I don't want to go on it because my anxiety is not that bad. Let me tell you, medication is important and significant for those for whom it works. Sometimes you have to go through a couple different medications to get to something that works. And that can be a really hard process. And for some people, that process is not worth it. As a therapist, I would never tell someone that their only option is medication or that they need to get off their medication. I would absolutely tell someone if I think medication would help them. And I would absolutely tell someone if I think their current medication is not working the way that it needs to. But what you put in your body is your choice. I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a medical doctor. And I do not have the ability to tell someone for sure that a certain medication is better for them or that, they should be on a different dosage. I don't have that knowledge. I did not go to school for that. And the thing is, medication can only help so much. And the real answer for someone with a diagnosed anxiety disorder is both medication and talk therapy, usually cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. That the combination of the two, the right medications and CBT, is shown statistically to be the most effective in managing an anxiety problem. It is also never advisable to go on or off any medication that has to do with anxiety or depression without the explicit instructions from a medical professional. And so if you are somebody who is taking anxiety medication, but you're not sure it's working, don't just stop taking it. Go see who prescribed it for you. If it's your psychiatrist, if it's your family doctor, whoever it is that prescribed it for you, go to them and tell them it's not working. If you want to get on medication and you're dealing with anxiety, you're not sure that you have an anxiety disorder, don't go grab a Xanax from a friend who's been prescribed it. That wasn't prescribed for you. You need to go see a medical professional to get yourself under the correct care. Please stop taking other people's pills. The last myth that I'm going to get into bookends with the first, and it's why it's my last one, and that is the myth that everyone has anxiety. Yes. That is true. It's not a myth. That's actually true. The myth is the meaning that people attach to that. Everyone has anxiety, and therefore I must not need to deal with this, or I must just be fine. You have heard me say this multiple times, and you will hear me continue to say this until everyone in the entire world understands this. So buckle in. We are living in trauma. We are living in a collective trauma, and is an elongated, anxious response expected? Yes. Does that mean an elongated, anxious response is one that we should just live in because it's just where we are? No, that's not how that works. If you are interacting with anxious thoughts and stressors and anxiety in a way in your day-to-day life that it is detracting from your ability to enjoy your life, you need to deal with it. That is how you get through it. Talking to a professional, naming your feelings with people around you, not allowing yourself to just ignore it and hope it goes away. Those are the ways that you get through this. Those are the ways that we deal with our day-to-day bizarre nature that is our lives right now. That's how we deal with it. If you have specific questions about anxiety, I would love it if you would email me or comment on this video. If I get enough questions, maybe I'll do a part 2. So I hope this video was helpful for you. I hope that we debunked a couple of the myths about anxiety. At the very least, I want to normalize this for you and help you to understand that while everyone might be dealing with anxious thoughts or anxious feelings or anxiety in this current state that we are in, it does not mean you have to suffer through it, and you definitely don't have to do it alone. Have a great week. I will see you soon. Take care of each other.